and sisters, it's your brother G World 7_D. Now there's a larger image of this, and it shows you these are some straight up Negroes, but I'm gonna do a quick part 2 to this. Alright? And I'm gonna go here, I'm gonna read this, and I'm gonna give you a quick explanation, a quick statement. The Pequot War and the origins of slavery in New England. Captured and enslavement of Indians marked the earliest contact between English adventurers and native inhabitants. Even before the English planted colonies in New England, they forcefully removed Indians from coastal settlements to provide labor or for sale abroad. This sporadic practice moved into a new, more intensive stage with the outbreak of the Pequot War, the first major conflict between the English and indigenous peoples in the region. The war sparked a new regional military and political arrangements among English and Native Americans that facilitated enslavement. After the conflict, the colonies established legal precedents that for decades defined Indian slavery and involuntary servitude. Many scholars have explored the causes and consequences of the Pequot War. Some have viewed it as a crucial stage in the English conquest of the Northeast, opening the way to territorial and eventually demographic expansion of Euro-American settlement. That term is expansion a lot. Others have stressed the demonization of Indians that accompanied the battle and the savagery with which English forces fought. Still others have viewed it from perspective of alliances and relations among Native Americans in the region. A focus on Indian slavery points to another way of interpreting the war, however, and of explaining the actions of Massachusetts and Connecticut military forces beginning in the summer of 1637. Although the Pequot War, for a variety of strategic and economic reasons, for the English and their Native American allies, it quickly became a conflict whose purpose was securing captives. In the context of the war, English colonies saw both an opportunity to acquire captives and legal pretext for enslavement of Indians. At the time when Indian and European war practices offer several possible courses of action in dealing with prisoners, especially non-combatants, the English in New England made a conscious decision to enslave Pequots. Control of the slave surviving captives became such a priority for colonial authorities that it generated conflict with Indian allies who helped them win the war. The colony's post-war policies towards the region's Indians also stressed the need to protect English property rights in the Pequot captives. This made the Pequot War a crucial event in initiating and shaping a labor system that would characterize New England society for over 150 years. Okay. There's more I'm going to read. I'm going to probably do a part 3 to that, but I want to finish up a little bit what I was saying. Is that fact, when you listen to these names, it's so similar. All right, you're dealing with the Abenaki Nation. All right, that was on the cover. And you obviously see those Negroes, and you see the environment they were in, and the clothes that they're wearing. It's obviously so-called black people, and these group of people were in the Northeast. But these names sound similar, I say, because these are basically the same different groups of people, just broken off in different, I ain't going to say cliques, but different nations. That land that you see in the Northeast has a lot of rich universities. Like I said, the Ivy League universities, or those Eastern branch universities, which are considered very academic. All those land that them schools are built on, they stole that from the Aboriginal blacks. See, this is the purpose of identifying with Aboriginal or indigenous to this land, compared to calling yourself a foreigner, when you call yourself an African. All right, you had your Aboriginal blacks already here. When those white explorers came over here, this when they used the term the New World, because it was new to them. The first time whites came to the Americas they were as slaves. All right, but when they came as, quote, free, they came as, quote, as explorers, and this when they knew nothing about this land. See, I also want to tie that in, because I hear some people keep saying that America's a new world. No, it's not. And unfortunately, some of your Negro scholars keep pushing that lie. All right, that's wrong. How are you going to call this a new world when you have ancient civilizations already here? That's preposterous. All right, I'm also wanting to tie in to the fact is that Europe was once originally all black. I've listened to someone did a podcast saying that Tariq didn't know where these European names come from. They come from black people, dude. Those names like Stoneman, the son of the stone man, or the craftsman, the son of the craftsman. Those names come from that black nobility over in Europe. All right, and we spoke English here too, but those names come from those black nobility. Those people who come from Europe. Those names come from them. All right. The white folks, I said this in other videos, did not have last names. Hell, some of the bastards didn't have first names. Europe was once totally ruled by black people. I showed pictures before of black people over in Russia, who ruled Russia, and then black people who ruled the Scandinavian countries as well as Middle and Southern Europe. That was originally ruled by black people because white folks come from Central Asia and they migrated into so-called Europe around 1200 BC. That group was absorbed. Then you had another group that came in AD. All right, so we got to be, one of the reasons that a lot of the black population did sort of decrease was through the Black Plague. That killed off, many of them killed off by diseases. A lot of those white folks had diseases. It was coming from the forest, and they basically, a lot of the indigenous black population were wiped out. They were wiped out. And then you have many different fractions and fighting over power amongst each other in Europe. All right. The so-called Catholic Church was created by Negroes. I done showed you that. I done showed you the images who all St. Peter, who the Negroes originally, how they originally look like. And those archaeological structures that was built over in Europe. So you had the black people, when those black people started to fight amongst each other and the numbers started to dwindle, then the white folks collectively came together, who came there, as well as some sellout blacks came together to overthrow the black people who was in rulership. So you have to understand fully the history. The original people of all of Europe, it wasn't just some people ruling Europe, it was all black people ruling Europe. I want to make that clear because I'm hearing people on YouTube saying stuff that they mentioned Tariq and how he can't explain these quote European names. These names come from the British Isles and Scotland. And the original people there were Negroes. And many of the black people who were English names who came into the Americas came out of Scotland, came out of Ireland, and then come from the British Islands. And then you did have black people who were Sephardic Jews out of Spain who came into the Americas. Yes, you did. This is why it's very important to study your full history. Because all those regions were black. Not all so-called Moors were Islamic. You had a lot of more Christians. You had some of them who were Jewish. Not all of them were Islamic. You have to understand our people. That's one of the reasons why our empires fail, because we're too busy fighting amongst each other over some silly-ass political belief system. You need to understand it. I mentioned King James before, how his subjects created Jamestown. Those are Negroes. Because James was a Negro himself, the ruler of England and Scotland. So you had black rulers ruling Europe because Europe was once a black continent named after a black goddess. A so-called black, whatever you want to use the term. Some people don't like to use the term black, whatever. But I'm making this my point. I'm connected back here. You had so-called melanated black rulership who ruled this part of the world from Canada to Argentina. I said in my last video. All of Asia, all the Pacific Islands, in Australia, in Europe. Caucasians come from Central Asia. They did not originate in Europe. And it's because of a lot of that Black Plague and in-house fighting helped basically reduce the number of so-called black people in Europe. That plague killed off a lot of people. You have to understand that. So stop throwing that stuff out saying that we have white names. That tells me you don't know what the hell you're talking about. So brothers and sisters, I want you to continue to do your research. I'm going to do a 3 in this. I just read that one quickly because I'm going to do a number 3 with this one because it's something I want to get. I want to talk about how different ideologies help fracture the groups of brothers and sisters here in America. Also, some of my people just stop fighting. And when you stop fighting, you allow foreigners or people who intrude in your land to come in to overtake your land. Remember, some of my people here were warriors. Some of my people here were, quote, peaceful so-called people who didn't believe in necessarily fighting. They did things by ceremonial dances and all that other stuff. But not all of our people were, quote, warriors.